When I was 17, I was diagnosed with end-stage renal failure. I've mentioned that before. I think I've said it on more than one occasion. 17 is a weird age. It's an awkward age. It's like probably within the context of a life, one of the weirdest in a general sense, just because you're going from that age of childhood into this kind of notion of some level of maturity, at least from the standpoint of your society, your legal, and the way that your society kind of looks at you. Having to kind of incorporate a new normal into what was already a challenge to normality was not necessarily the easiest thing in the world to do. And people handle that stuff in different ways. I don't necessarily begrudge people, at least in a distance. People, I don't want people being belligerent in which case, but people respond to those things in different ways. People are people, right? The pieces or the videos I like doing the least, and I would even argue, at least in an emotional way, not necessarily like doing it at all, intellectually sometimes I deem it necessary to do, are videos where you're going after somebody. Somebody has said something, done something, got over something that has pissed you off. And that's not always. There's some people who I find to be repugnant, in which case it's like killing a Nazi. But in other cases, less so. What goes through my head when I do videos like that, especially when it's singling out an individual, has to do with me as a person. I as an individual, like anybody else, is a person. You're flawed. You fuck up. In the grand scheme of things, people bounce who they are against society. And they come back sometimes with awkward ways of dealing with that stuff. And as such, there's some things society deem right, wrong, frown upon, like, and otherwise, that the individual exudes or not. And that person has a hard time dealing with those things. And not just the hard time dealing with those things. I just mean, and I'm saying this in a weird way, I just mean, I know that regardless of what is being done from the standpoint of taking this kind of perspective of being above something and criticizing something, that ultimately the person who's above it and criticizing is ultimately only, and at the end of the day, just the person. And it's just as flawed and fucked up as the person to which they're criticizing. I know that. And because I know that, doing those videos, to some degree, I hate doing. By the same token, it's the job. And ultimately, when you're looking down and you're making that criticism, the criticism is often apt, even if you yourself, at the end of the day, are just as flawed. I did a video yesterday going after a woman on TYT named Ashlee Marie Preston. If I'm being honest, it is a very good video, even though I hated doing the video. She's, I don't know if there's a technical terminology from the standpoint of surrogate, but ultimately she boosts Warren. She's a surrogate of Warren's. This is her boosting Warren or talking to Warren.
You're not relying on frothy emotional appeal to sell people with tickets or to pander, but there's an actual sense of duty and integrity. I saw the interview with Rachel Maddow, and I like how you talked about the need to still do the right thing even though it's inconvenient.
That's right.
Now, clearly that's ludicrous. People can like Warren for whatever reason they want to like Warren, but at the point where you say something that I can compare to objective reality, I can kind of point to the fact that that's not objective reality. Warren did not go out for Standing Rock despite calling herself a Native American for 30 years. And when it came time to step out for somebody who was ideologically close to you, supposedly, meaning Sanders in 2016, she didn't do that. That kind of disproves this notion that this woman comes out when it's inconvenient. I'm sorry, she does not. But I can't begrudge somebody for supporting a candidate for any reason that they want to support a candidate. And she supports Warren. She said something that was patently untrue. Stop. Sanders hasn't even showed up to an LGBTQ event since the 70s. Now, I pointed out that was nonsense. And I even showed that the Daily Beast, somebody who greatly dislikes Sanders, shows that Sanders created a utopian, a trans mecca, in their terms, in Burlington, Vermont. Meaning, he's been showing up 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, and he is still there. He hasn't gone anywhere, going back to the 70s, even when it was inconvenient for him to do so. Meaning he was supporting this organization, not just walking with King, not just being chained to a black woman, but also supporting LGBTQ, and when it was not safe politically to do so. This is flat fact false. I also made the point that your candidate was not doing that. Your candidate was not stepping out for the LGBTQ community when it was safe. And even now, right now, at this very moment, LGBT debate, when she was asked, forum, when she was asked about trans, meaning whether or not it should be held to a hate crime, she said the following, or be under hate crime laws.
You also have to protect them as what they are. Do you think that a crime against somebody who is transgender should be punished as a hate crime in statute?
You know, I think we could, if we think that's going to be the most effective way to make change. So I'm open to this.
She's open to it. So you're attacking my candidate, saying that he wasn't there since the 70s when I demonstrated that he was there the entire time. I could show you when he's arguing, again, well of Congress, when it was not popular, when it was not safe to do so. And he's been doing so, even by your own estimate, since the 70s. Your candidate is asked whether or not LGBTQ community should be held under hate crime laws, and she's quote-unquote just open to it as opposed to just saying yes. If the whole point of hate crime laws is to protect a minority that is maligned and potentially attacked or have been attacked and show a record of being attacked from the majority, then I don't understand the rationale of just answering that question. Yes, my guy would say yes, but my guy's been around since the 70s. The person who you're pushing, who says she takes bold stances, not so much. I went further into showing some of the things that Ashlee Preston has said herself, because my argument was you better be a paragon of virtue if you're going to be saying stuff like this. Well, not so much. Your publicist must have got you, which is why you deleted your previous problematic. Right. Asian hoes act like they won't get karate chopped. They motherfucking throat. What is this hoe staring? Mind your beeswax. Latino and Asian businesses need to stop being rude and fucking disrespectful. And no, I know a lot. The accent in California, but speak fucking English. Yeah, I said it. Another damn Asian almost hit me while crossing. What the fuck is with y'all damn vehicles? I have an idea. The Asian nigga in the subway got fat ass. He almost looks like a bitch from behind. And by the way, this also goes into this notion of saying the term faggot and using it liberally, saying people look like trannies and transvestites. Some of the language that is used is pretty rough, to say the least. Difficult to read, to say the least. This woman sits on TYT often. And this person, who's been using language against the LGBTQ community that is offensive, to say the least, and seems to have a bigoted perspective towards Asians, is attacking my candidate. She responded to this. And I know this is a long intro, and I'm going to keep this video relatively short after this, but she responded to these comments. This is interesting. Welcome to the Soapbox. My name is Jamarl Thomas. This is the Progressive Soapbox. Like, share, subscribe. You can always support PayPal, Patreon, all that good stuff. This video is going to be quick because I am running behind, but I wanted to get this video out because this video was running through my head. I know it sounds like I was all over the place, but actually I wasn't. It was very specific to what I wanted to talk about. Ultimately, she responds to comments that were made several years ago. Ultimately, what this boils down to is her point is, look, I made a lot of comments. I was hateful during that time. This was about 7-8 years ago. And she says, I was having issues with my own issues of identity. This kind of goes to my point of it is not the easiest thing in the world to integrate a new normal, and people respond and behave in all sorts of ways. It seems that her response during the time before she had her, before she incorporated her perspective now, because she's transgender herself, was a certain anger towards the community. This is her statement. Taking accountability of the past and staying rooted in the present and absorbing lessons for the future. At the height of my meth addiction 8 years ago, I made a series of racially insensitive and homophobic tweets. I wasn't out yet and was dealing with internalizing transphobia while homeless in a neighborhood where I felt culturally inferior. I'd stay up for days at end tweeting from an impaired consciousness while shadowboxing via tweets with anyone who made me feel less than. Although those tweets were resurfaced as a political play, I take full responsibility for actions and deeply apologize to those who offended or hurt. I also apologize to those who are indirectly impacted by these developments. I mean, you can read it here. Apparently, she unblocked me. I mean, but so, is what it is. I never said anything bad to her. I always feel some kind of way. Like I said, when I do videos where I go after people, and I read that, and emotionally I feel some kind of way. Intellectually, I think I was right. I was more right. In fact, whatever I did in that video, I was even more right than that. Because while you're saying my guy wasn't standing up for the LGBT community, while you were out there slandering people during your meth addiction who were transphobic, you were standing up for that community. It's like I feel some kind of way when I read that, and it's like, oh, fuck, man, she was a meth addict at the time, and he not dealing with the fact of all of these things well, not to mention the things that were inside of her from a standpoint of identity. All of that stuff made a difficult scenario where she was out there attacking people for certain issues that she herself was dealing with. I feel some kind of way about that. I feel bad about that. I even feel bad to some degree about doing the video. By the same token, intellectually, I think I was right. I was more right. I was more right than I even thought I was. It's one thing for a person who's transgender to attack other transgender. Women call each other bitch all the time. Black call themselves niggas. That type of stuff. It's another thing for somebody who's outside of the community to do so. It comes across in a particular way. It's almost like if you're part of the club, you can use this language. Fair enough. As an African American who's used the term nigger on more than one occasion, fair enough. I can't hate that. But that's not when that was being done. That was being done while you were a guy, and why, from the standpoint of public perception, you were a guy attacking other people in the community. I get it that there's difficulties in integration. Like I said, in kidney failure stuff, there's a difficulty in trying to make that new normal. And some people deal with that with rage. I never dealt with it that way because I never thought it was anybody's fault. But people deal with things in the way they deal with things. My only point is this. Sanders, you're attacking him, saying he didn't show up since the 70s. While you were attacking other people in that community, he was standing up for that community. That's my only point. My only point is my video was more right than I thought. Bernie hasn't showed up for the LGBT event since the 70s. He was there while you were making these hateful tweets attacking people of that community. As I said in that video, you are not the one to attack him on this front. He had been there. He didn't need to evolve on this issue. He was always there. I appreciate you're taking into account for this stuff. Honestly, I do. And you're right that people bought that stuff up for political hits. But again, you put this out that wasn't true at all for political reasons. So let's be clear, everybody's playing with the same playbook. I appreciate the accountability for past stuff. Like I said, everybody's a person. Nobody's perfect. I have no expectations of anybody being a paragon of virtue throughout the course of their life, and they evolve on the various issues. I think I said this once before. I was raging out one day to a friend of my dad's, saying, look, my dad never really cared, and he set me down one day and says, your dad was just a guy. Flawed, imperfect, a fuck up, just like pretty much everyone else. I don't hate this. I even appreciate this. By the same token, you attacking Sanders on this very specific issue is a fail. And you are infinitely wrong. And again, he was there even when you weren't. Like, share, subscribe.